Last week I got my hands on the brand new Blackmagic PYXIS 12K. I rigged it up and went straight onto a real world project. The reason I'm so excited about this camera is because it feels like Blackmagic have been building this since their very first cinema camera 13 years ago. Doing all of those design refinements, even developing their own sensor technology, and then finally taking Ursa Cine level power and putting it in such a compact, small body. But specs on paper mean absolutely nothing if it can't perform out there in the field. So let me show you how this thing has been holding up. So let's start out with what everybody really wants to know, and that is image quality and how this compares to the Ursa Cine 12K. I've only had the camera for around 1 week and I've done one shoot on it so far. I did consider using cinema lenses on that shoot I did, but I wanted to see how this performed with some L-mount lenses. I started out in a small studio using controlled lighting, but then I moved on to a restaurant where I took zero lighting at all. I just had the camera, a tripod and some lenses. And considering just that, I think the results are really impressive. The skin tones here are really top notch, like as good as I have seen. These are Alexa level skin tone textures. I don't think there's any weird reflective or shininess to the skin. It's got no uneven colours or like lifeless colours. It just looks really natural and familiar to the eye. When I reviewed this sensor inside the Ursa Cine 12K, I did mention that it was the best dynamic range I have personally ever used. It is noticeably better when I jump on this sensor than in all the other cameras I use week to week. And I have shot on the OG Alexa sensor, and this is right up there, as good as that, if not better. I've not shot on the Alexa 35, I'm sure that takes things to another level, but considering price and value, the dynamic range of this sensor is absolutely incredible. One of the main reasons that people love that OG Alexa sensor so much is because of how beautiful the highlights roll off. And I think Blackmagic have taken massive inspiration here with this. And there's some times when I'm looking at the monitor and I'm second guessing whether windows are overexposed, only to flip on false color to find out it is. It just rolls off in such a soft, nice way. It's not distracting, it's not harsh, it does not draw the viewer's attention to it. It kind of just sits there and does it just in the way that you would want. Now, I'm sure most people are aware that this thing lacks a lot of the modern day tech conveniences we have become to love. No IBIS, no great AF system. But one thing that is underrated and is a massive convenience that people overlook is the out of camera image. If you are someone who is not very experienced in color grading, or say you are someone who does not want to spend hours and hours in post-production color grading your images to push the maximum out of them, this camera will be your best friend. When I jump over into the color grading tab in DaVinci Resolve and I start moving around the images, brighter, darker, cooler, warmer, you name it, I'm kind of pushing and pulling them to kind of find out where the best looking image lies. And then I stop, I turn off the grade, and it is so close to the original image that came out of camera. Much closer on these images than the other cameras I'm used to, where I'm so used to hitting that bypass grade button and seeing a big change, where in this it is just so similar and it comes right out of camera really nice. I've shot in 12K, 8K, 4K and even a little bit in the 9K Super 35 mode. I edit on a base model M3 MacBook Pro, so no upgrades, just the base you could buy at the time. And let me tell you, B-roll is an absolute dream. The 12K open gate, which is a massive amount of pixels, plays back locked at 25 frames per second. Not only that, it grades really smooth as well. And while we're touching on grading the images, the latitude is excellent. I underexposed a couple of shots and I had no trouble jumping over to the RAW tab and pulling them up. I took them up by about 1 stop and there was no need to denoise the image, it still looked absolutely great. But while we're talking about noise as well, these are not super clean shadows. This camera definitely has like a textured filmic noise at all times in its shadows. It does get quite small if you shoot in 12K and then come down to like a 4K timeline as it's making the noise smaller. I haven't done any formal rolling shutter tests. I know it's a big deal with this camera as it gets worse than the Ursa Cine 12K. But what I did do is chuck it in 12K when I had a moment on the shoot and just kind of walk and do a little bit of shaky footage. In all honesty, I don't really do shaky footage in my workflow. I'm someone who likes to control the camera as much as possible. But I understand this can be an issue for a lot of people and the way they film. What I can say is in 12K, just kind of looking at the screen and watching the footage back, I don't think I see any issues. And I know it only gets better in 8 and 4K, but we'll just leave this one pinned and revisit it in some more tests in the future. So just make sure you are subscribed to see those. In another little free moment I had on the shoot, I noticed there were these 2 drinks sitting on a table in a really kind of difficult situation for a camera. It was kind of dim and dark with a harsh backlight. So what I did was I filmed in 12K, 8K and 4K just to see a quick comparison. Now these are no lab tests. People was walking around in the restaurant and the sun was probably going in and out the clouds outside the windows, slightly adjusting exposure. But from this quick test, I think it looks really promising for the lower resolution images. I think this camera is going to be a really good 4K camera, as I can't really see too much of a difference here in these images. So first impressions for anyone who's used PYXIS in the past, this body is identical, the I/O is the same, it is really just a different sensor inside that 6K PYXIS body. One big change though with the I/O is you can now output video from the rear USB-C. This has always been possible from the front USB-C port, as this is where you plugged in the Ursa EVF or the PYXIS monitor. The problem was you had to pick one or the other. Now, with this new ability to come out of the rear USB-C, we can have both at once. And something I know a lot of people are wanting to know is, can you use all the video outputs at the same time? So the front USB-C, the rear USB-C, and also the SDI port. And the answer is yes. In the menus now, you have options to change overlays and LUTs and focus peaking on all the different individual ports, and you can run them all at once. The biggest surprise for me, someone who's familiar with all the Blackmagic cinema cameras and pocket cameras they have ever made, and I've owned the lot, is this being the best build quality of them all. It is strange that this feels made out of a better material than the more expensive Ursa Cine 12K. The Ursa does have better features, like the buttons on the Ursa are way better. They're rubber, they feel better and they light up, which is a win for the Ursa. But if you're talking about overall materials, the Ursa still feels made out of that kind of classic plastic composite material that come with the pocket cameras, etc., and the old Ursa Mini G2. It just feels more premium to me in the hand than the more expensive Ursa Cine. Overall though, it's been a really pleasant experience. I'm super happy to be back on Blackmagic menus, as these are the best in the industry and no one has even come close in my opinion. The camera hasn't crashed or glitched, I've not needed to pull the battery or anything like that. I have been speaking to other people who are reviewing the PYXIS 12K who have mentioned that theirs have, so I'm sure there's going to be different messages coming out. It's just kind of luck of the draw. But for me, this has been really solid. This one here is a review unit from Blackmagic they sent out. As soon as I'm finished with it, it's going to go back. That said, this did turn up in a sealed box that looked like a genuine retail unit to me, so I believe this is kind of the finished thing that we will all receive. I personally do have a pre-order in for a Blackmagic PYXIS 12K, but just like the rest of us, I'm still waiting. I think with this PYXIS body, it's the first time that Blackmagic have kind of nailed that red camera robust feel, where like when you grab it by the top handle, nothing shakes or wobbles. It feels really solid. You've not got to buy any awkward rigs. Anyone who's owned a pocket cinema camera and has not wanted to use it in that form factor will know how kind of awkward and messy building a rig around that can get. My only real gripe would be the EVF top handle from Blackmagic. Basically, it's just a top handle that allows you to mount the EVF or the PYXIS monitor. I think it's a bit big, awkward and clunky. It's not necessarily needed. There are much better third-party versions out there on the market already, and that's kind of part of the fun of buying a PYXIS, as you get to build it out in your own custom way. So let's see what results I got from my battery tests. I've got them all wrote down. Let's quickly go over them here. Started off with the smallest 30 watt hour battery. This is the smallest BPU battery you can buy. This goes inside the body itself. So I started in 4K 16:9, which is going to be a really common 25 frames per second. That 30 watt battery got me 40 minutes. I then stayed on the smallest 30 watt hour battery, but went up to 8K and went into open gate, which I think is going to be a great middle ground for anyone who does not want 12K but wants better than 4K. And for this, I got 36 minutes until the camera died. Then finally, I got out a 99 watt hour V-mount. This is kind of the middle zone for V-mounts. They get smaller, they get bigger, but it's also a battery that you can travel and get on an aeroplane with. For this, I went into 12K open gate maximum resolution, so the highest the camera can go, and I got 1 hour and 42 minutes. For all of those tests, I was also running the Blackmagic PYXIS monitor, powering from the battery in the camera or the V-mount, at around 40% brightness. I also had the side screen turned on, and finally the tail lights was also on. Q5 compression, and it's worth noting that every time the battery died, the B-roll clip inside the camera was totally fine. I guess this is all going to be based on expectations, but from my opinion, considering what is possible with such a small tiny camera, I think these results are really not that bad, and I think I personally was expecting much worse. For the small shoot that I did on this camera, I shot for around 4 hours, and I had the small 30 watt BPU battery inside, and mounted on the back I had a V-mount plate with the 99 watt hour V-mount. I would say it died around 20 minutes before I finished my day, so pretty good going. And for my workflow, I've built up many V-mounts over the years. It's not going to be a single issue. I have more than enough batteries to get me through multiple days. But I do guess it depends on what you already own, what you're expecting to kind of carry, because V-mount batteries can get really heavy. But for someone in my situation and workflow, it's going to be totally fine. All of those battery tests that I run was here in my studio, and the 40-minute one, the 36-minute one, and finally the 12K kind of open gate max resolution one that went for over 1.5 hours. I would say the camera got warm to touch, but did not show any warning signs of overheating. I would still say it was less hot to touch than all these 8K mirrorless cameras that do overheat. For me, I'm not worried at all. Blackmagic don't have any track record of cameras overheating. I don't believe this is going to be the one that does. You can hear the fan if you put your ear right next to it. They're kind of pushing the airflow through. But I think this camera is going to be solid, but only time will tell. I'm sure I will find more negatives as the weeks do go by with this camera, because no camera is perfect, and the more you use a camera, the more you find out what you do and don't like. But I did manage to find out a few in this short first week. The first of all is the side screen that is built into the PYXIS body itself. I know this has also been reported before with the older PYXIS model, but this side screen is genuinely awful. The viewing angles on it are so bad. Like, as soon as you get to the side, it just makes the white balance look blue. The amount of times I've kind of glanced at the camera and thought my white balance is miles off, to then come level and straight on at the screen to find out it's totally fine. It generally, for me, just shouldn't exist. I would rather this go away, I get longer battery life and add more buttons. The PYXIS monitor though is way better. It's more colour accurate, the viewing angles are better, it goes way brighter. It's just better in every single way. For me, do not buy this camera without buying the PYXIS monitor. It should be more expensive and just ship inside the box. And my last small gripe that is really picky is the card door. I think it does just fine to keep dust out and protect your CFast card, but it's really fiddly. It's like this long rubber flap that's kind of poked into the body at two separate points. It feels really cheap and way cheaper than, say, like a locking card door that most cinema cameras have. And I can't imagine it would have added much cost to the build of this camera by adding a card door. Overall though, my short time with the PYXIS 12K has been absolutely fantastic. I've always been a big admirer of Blackmagic's mission to go and get really expensive cinematic video cameras and bring them down to be more affordable. And this may be the best version of that we have ever seen. More tests to come, stay tuned, and in the meantime, YouTube thinks you're going to love this video here.